For most of modern history, buying a home wasn't just a financial goal. It was proof that your hard work had paid off. It meant stability, independence, a place to build a family, create memories, and invest in your future. For decades, the formula seemed simple. Go to school, find a stable job, save your money, and eventually buy a house. That promise became so deeply woven into society that people called it the American dream. But somewhere along the way, that dream began slipping away. Today, millions of people are doing exactly what previous generations were told to do. They work full-time jobs, earn decent salaries, and save responsibly. Yet home ownership feels further away than ever. In many cities, even people with above-average incomes struggle to afford an ordinary house. Some have given up on buying altogether. Others continue renting year after year, watching prices rise faster than their savings. And this isn't just happening in the United States. Similar housing crises are unfolding across Canada, the United Kingdom, Australia, and many other developed countries. So what happened? Did people stop working hard? Or has something much bigger changed beneath the surface? Because the housing crisis isn't simply about expensive homes. It's about an entire generation beginning to question whether the future they were promised still exists. One of the biggest reasons housing feels impossible today is simple. Home prices have grown much faster than wages. While incomes have increased gradually, housing costs have accelerated at an entirely different pace. Imagine running up a staircase where every step keeps getting taller while your legs stay the same length. No matter how hard you try, catching up becomes almost impossible. Even promotions and salary increases often aren't enough. At the same time, higher mortgage interest rates have made borrowing far more expensive. Even if home prices remain unchanged, monthly payments can increase dramatically, pushing ownership beyond the reach of many families. Saving for a down payment has become just as difficult because of rising rent. Every month, millions of people spend a huge portion of their income simply keeping a roof over their heads. That leaves little money to save, creating what economists often call the rent trap. High rent makes saving difficult, and without savings, buying a home becomes nearly impossible. The cycle repeats itself year after year. This helps explain why more young adults are living with their parents longer than previous generations. It's not always because they lack ambition. Often, it's simply one of the few ways to save enough money in an economy where rent consumes such a large share of income. But demand is only half the story. The other half is supply. Quite simply, there aren't enough homes being built where people want to live. Growing cities continue attracting workers, but housing construction hasn't kept pace with population growth. Building homes has also become far more expensive. Land prices have soared. Construction materials became more costly after years of inflation and supply chain disruptions. Skilled labor shortages slow projects and increase costs. On top of that, strict zoning laws often limit higher density housing, while lengthy approval processes can delay new developments for years. When demand grows faster than supply, prices almost always rise. Developers face another challenge as well. Luxury housing usually generates much higher profits than affordable housing. As a result, many companies focus on expensive apartments and high-end condominiums instead of starter homes. That creates another obstacle for first-time buyers. Even when new housing is built, much of it is priced beyond what average families can afford. Affordable homes become scarcer, competition intensifies, and prices continue climbing. At first glance, it seems like simple economics. Too many buyers, too few homes. But over the past 2 decades, the housing market has undergone an even bigger transformation. Homes stopped being viewed only as places to live. They became investments. For many buyers, purchasing property is now as much about building wealth as finding a place to live. Rising home values, rental income, and long-term appreciation turned real estate into one of the world's most attractive investments. That changed the market in ways few people fully appreciated. Families looking for a home were no longer competing only with other families, they were competing with investors. After the 2008 financial crisis, large investment firms began purchasing thousands of homes across different cities, recognizing that residential real estate could generate reliable long-term returns. With enormous amounts of capital, they could make cash offers, close deals quickly, and outbid ordinary buyers who depended on mortgage approvals. Imagine saving for years to buy your first home, only to lose it because a corporation offered cash within hours. Institutional investors don't own every house on the market, but their growing presence has fundamentally changed competition in many regions. Housing increasingly became another financial asset, traded much like stocks or commercial real estate. And when homes become investments first and shelter second, affordability often becomes a secondary concern. That trend didn't stop there. Short-term rental platforms like Airbnb also changed the economics of owning property. Instead of renting homes to local families on yearly leases, many owners realized they could earn far more by renting to tourists for just a few nights at a time. In popular cities, thousands of homes gradually disappeared from the long-term rental market, reducing supply even further. In some countries, foreign investment added additional pressure. Real estate in politically stable nations became a safe place for global wealth, increasing competition in markets that were already struggling with limited housing. Housing was no longer just part of the local economy, it had become part of a global financial system, and that changed the market forever. Even for the people who eventually managed to buy a home, the financial challenges don't end after signing the paperwork. Owning a home comes with far more than a monthly mortgage payment. Property taxes, insurance, maintenance, utilities, and unexpected repairs can cost thousands of dollars every year. A leaking roof, a broken heating system, or major plumbing issue can become a financial emergency overnight. Home ownership can absolutely build wealth, but it also requires a level of financial stability that many first-time buyers struggle to maintain. These challenges have helped create one of the biggest wealth gaps between generations in modern history. Many older homeowners entered the market when homes were far more affordable relative to income. As property values increased over decades, so did their wealth. Home equity became a source of financial security, helping fund retirements, children's education, businesses, and future opportunities. Younger generations entered a completely different market. They face higher prices, higher borrowing costs, larger down payments, and greater competition. As a result, many millennials and Gen Z are reaching major life milestones much later than previous generations. Marriage, starting a family, and even moving out independently are increasingly delayed because housing affects nearly every financial decision people make. The divide between homeowners and renters continues to grow. Homeowners benefit when property values rise because their wealth grows alongside their homes. Renters don't receive that advantage. Every rent payment provides shelter, but it doesn't build ownership or long-term equity. Over decades, that difference compounds into enormous financial inequality. Housing has become much more than a real estate issue. It's become a wealth issue. Social media has made these feelings even stronger. Every day, millions of people scroll through videos of luxury apartments, dream homes, and breathtaking interiors. Success has become something people can see, but what audiences rarely see are the mortgages, debt, years of saving, family assistance, or financial risks behind those homes. The internet rewards extraordinary lifestyles, making ordinary progress feel insignificant. Instead of comparing ourselves with our neighbors, we compare ourselves with the most successful people on the internet. The housing crisis isn't just changing where people live, it's changing how they see their future. So the biggest question becomes, can it actually be fixed? The answer is yes, but not quickly, and certainly not with one simple solution. Housing became expensive because several problems developed together over decades. That means solving the crisis requires progress on multiple fronts. Building more homes is one obvious answer. More supply can eventually reduce competition and stabilize prices, but that's easier said than done. Land is expensive, construction costs remain high, skilled labor is limited, and many housing projects take years to receive approval. Even when governments recognize the problem, progress is often painfully slow. Technology may help. Modular construction, AI-assisted planning, and 3D printed homes could reduce costs and speed up development. But technology alone can't erase decades of underbuilt. Housing is one of those problems where every solution takes time, and time is exactly what millions of people feel they don't have. The crisis has also become something much bigger than economics. It's psychological. For previous generations, buying a home represented adulthood. It meant stability, independence, and security. Today, many young adults aren't asking, when will I buy my first home? They're asking, will I ever be able to? That small change says everything. When people stop believing that hard work will eventually lead to stability, it changes how they plan their lives. Saving becomes harder when the goal feels impossible. Optimism slowly turns into frustration, and uncertainty begins affecting career decisions, family planning, mental health, and confidence in the future. What's remarkable is that this isn't just an American problem. In many other developed countries, the same pattern keeps repeating itself. Housing prices rise faster than wages. Supply struggles to meet demand. Younger generations delay buying homes, while wealth becomes increasingly concentrated among existing homeowners. Different countries have different governments and different policies, yet they're facing remarkably similar challenges. That suggests the housing crisis is part of a much larger shift in how modern housing markets operate. And maybe that's why this issue feels so personal, because a house has never been just four walls and a roof. It represents security, stability, independence. It's where families grow, memories are made, and futures are imagined. When that goal becomes harder to reach, people don't just lose access to property, they begin losing confidence in the future they expected to have. None of this means means homeownership has become impossible, millions of people still buy homes every year. Markets change, new neighborhoods are built, some regions remain far more affordable than others. Smart financial decisions, higher income, consistent saving, and choosing the right location can still improve someone's chances of becoming a homeowner. But those realities shouldn't distract from the bigger picture. The housing market facing millennials and Gen Z is fundamentally different from the one their parents entered decades ago. Perhaps the biggest lesson from this crisis is that somewhere along the way, housing stopped being treated primarily as shelter and started being treated as an investment. That transformation created enormous wealth for millions of homeowners, but it also made entering the market increasingly difficult for everyone else. As long as homes serve two purposes at the same time, a place to live and a financial asset, there will always be tension between affordability and profitability. That may become one of the defining economic challenges of the coming decades. Because in the end, the housing crisis isn't really about houses. Expensive homes are only the symptom. The deeper issue is that an entire generation is beginning to question a promise society made for decades. That if you studied hard, worked responsibly, saved your money, and played by the rules, you would eventually build a stable future. For generations, owning a home became the symbol of that promise. It represented progress, opportunity, the belief that tomorrow could be better than today. Today, that belief feels more uncertain than ever, and maybe that's the hidden cost nobody talks about. The housing crisis isn't just making homes more expensive, it's making the future itself feel more expensive. Because when millions of people stop believing they can afford a place to call home, what they're really losing isn't just property, it's the dream that home ownership and everything it once represented is still within reach.